Well, I just got my first snake. I believe it's a ball python. The pet store tells me it's a fancy. Now my question is, what morph should I breed it with? Hi folks, it's just me, Bob. I was in disguise, playing a character that might be jumping the gun a little bit on his snake keeping journey. You were like, who the heck is this guy? Where's Bob? Well, I'm a master of disguises. I should be an undercover detective. Anyway, let's talk about a few things that you might want to think about if you're considering breeding ball pythons. Welcome to the Green Room. I'm Bob Bledsoe. This is Evie. That's Kent behind the camera. When you did that character, I could tell it was you. Well, you did see me put the glasses and hat on, so... Oh, right. I guess that's why. Yeah. I posted a video a couple weeks back about how to strategize picking out snakes for a breeding project. And in the back of my mind, I thought, you know, I should do a video at some point about whether someone should breed or not. But then based on some of the comments and questions that I got after that video, I realized that the should you breed video should probably come out ASAP. So, you know, this is obviously a personal choice whether you want to breed or not, but I just want to give you a few things to think about if you're considering it. Let's first talk about somebody who's a brand new keeper and thinking about breeding. Breeding snakes is a whole different skill set and a whole other level than just keeping snakes. And someone who isn't an expert keeper with not only knowledge but plenty of hands-on experience probably shouldn't be trying to breed snakes. Now, if the snake that you bought, you're a new keeper and the snake that you bought is a hatchling, and in most cases that's going to be the situation, then that's great to look into breeding because you'll have plenty of time as that snake grows to gain experience, gain knowledge, look into what it takes to breed, and you'll have 2 or 3 years at least to figure out whether you actually want to do this. So that's great. If, however, you bought a snake that's like this size and you're just planning to throw them together with another snake right away, you might be jumping the gun a little bit. I sometimes see very basic husbandry questions posted from people that are trying to breed their snakes. And in my opinion, if you're trying to breed your snakes, you should be the one answering those basic husbandry questions and maybe some more advanced ones too. That's not to say that you shouldn't ask questions, because you should, but I'm just saying that if you're at the point where you're breeding these animals, you should know everything you possibly can about the basics. And, you know, be one of those people that can answer pretty much any question that pops up. The cool thing about snakes is that even though there is a lot to know about keeping them, once you know it, it's not that complicated. They're not a super complicated animal. So, you know, get the basics down first. Now, don't get me wrong. If we're talking about especially ball pythons, getting them to breed, getting the female to lay some eggs and getting those eggs to hatch is a pretty simple process. It's more complicated with some other species, but for ball pythons, it's pretty simple. But beyond that, there's a lot of other things that you need to know beyond just how to work an incubator and such like that. You know, there's problems that can come up with the mom. Once those babies hatch, what are you going to do with them? How do you care for them? Things like that. So there's just some other considerations. So let's talk about the market for ball python specifically, but if you're thinking about breeding any other kind of snake, this is something to think about too. There are a lot of people that say that the market is flooded. There's too many breeders of ball pythons and we're flooded at this point. And I hear what you're saying, but I kind of disagree. So let me tell you why. Ball pythons are probably the number 1 or number 2. They're probably the number 2 most popular reptile to own. Number 1, I'm guessing, is a bearded dragon. I don't know what the actual statistics are. If you know the actual statistics, pop them down in the comment section. But the point is that ball pythons, and this is within the United States and Canada, but I would say around the world, this probably holds true, that ball pythons are extremely popular. They have been since the 1990s. I haven't looked on Morph Market lately, but at any given time, there's an estimate of anywhere between 700 billion and a trillion 300 million billion snakes. That might be an exaggeration. Let's look, actually. 44,175 snakes on Morph Market. And the thing is, all of those snakes will find homes, and they'll be replaced by new snakes that are for sale. Hi folks, Future Bob here. I have Dolly crawling across my hat. As I'm editing this video right now, I'm realizing that I neglected to finish making a very important point, which is that all those snakes will find homes, but they won't necessarily find homes on Morph Market. And that's because there's a very specific type of ball python that sells very well on Morph Market and a certain type that doesn't sell well on Morph Market, which we're going to talk about. So they'll all find homes, but not necessarily online. Most people that are shopping on Morph Market have large families of snakes because they either are used to keeping snakes and they're always buying them, or they're breeding and they're always buying them. That's the major customer base on Morph Market. There's a lot of just, regular pet keepers that just have one or two that might purchase on Morph Market, but those are going to buy from pet stores and things like that also. I'm not going to talk about the fact that like right now the market is down. It's going to go back up. It goes up and down, and it kind of goes with inflation and the economy. And it also kind of goes with the availability of snakes, how many snakes are on Morph Market at any given time. But we're not so much talking about that. We're just talking about, in general, this is a very popular animal, and it will continue to be. The popularity of just keeping reptiles is on the rise, and oftentimes people choose this snake as their first. In fact, this snake is going to go back in her tub because I'm sitting here watching the superdwarfs going crazy. They want out, so I'm going to pull them out, and we'll see what their mood is like. You don't mind that, right? If we get the superdwarfs out? Let's do that. Ball pythons, specifically, are a very easy, manageable snake, and a good first snake to have if you do your research. And that's why most of those snakes will sell very easily on Morph Market. We're going to get into the snakes that don't sell, or maybe the breeders that don't sell well on Morph Market or anywhere else, and I'll tell you why. I will tell you though, a snake that I do think is maybe overbred in the United States, at least. Do you have a guess before I say it? Put your guess in the comments below. And while you're down there, hit the like and subscribe button. Do you enjoy these videos but you're not subscribed? Check and see if you're subscribed. If not, hit that subscribe button. That probably gives you enough time to comment your guess, right? Okay, I'm gonna say it. Mainland reticulated pythons, I believe, are probably overbred in the United States. There's a lot of breeders, and most of them are small breeders. They have a few snakes maybe that they breed, these giant retics, and they probably have a customer base that they can sell those to. But what I'm talking about is there are some very large breeders who are breeding tons of massive females who are laying 50 to 100 eggs. And the really genetically cool mainland reticulated pythons will have no problem finding homes, but there is a lot left over after those, the really good ones out of those clutches sell. There's a lot left over of a snake that is very unmanageable. So I love mainland retics. I think they're cool, but they might be overbred in the United States for that reason. Echo, are you good up there? Should I move the hat so you're not? All right, Stella, should we get you out too? Now, just because a snake sells well doesn't mean that you shouldn't strategize who you're going to sell to, because there's a lot of people that I see run into a problem. I read a post, this was over a year ago, from a woman who was really upset. She had posted her first clutch on Morph Market a while back and nothing had sold. And she was kind of posting and threatening to get out of breeding if nobody bought her stuff. She was really frustrated. And upon looking, I've got Stella coming out of her cage right now, so I'm just going to manage her while I talk. Upon looking at her Morph Market page, her snakes were a mix of Mojaves and normals. Now, for those who don't know, Mojave is a great gene. It's really cool, but it's been around for a long time, and it's pretty inexpensive. You can pick up a Mojave ball python for probably $100, and a normal will go for, what, 50, 25? Plus you got to pay for shipping if you buy it on Morph Market, which is a little inconvenient. You're going to pay more for shipping than you will for the snake. So the thing to think about here is this, that if you have a Mojave or a snake with just a couple codom genes or something, that's not going to be, the offspring of that snake is probably not going to be something that's going to sell well on Morph Market, because those are, hey, don't knock that over. The people that buy on Morph Market are breeders looking to take their projects to the next level. They're looking for higher end snakes. And so a lower end snake doesn't sell very well on Morph Market. Those are the snakes that go to pet stores, or you see them sold on Craigslist and such like that. There are a lot of snakes right now that are in shelters, foster care, looking for homes. And those, and one I'm talking about, there are a lot of snakes in general, but we're talking about ball pythons. So there's a, what are you doing? You okay up there? So there's a lot of ball pythons right now that are in shelters looking for homes, and when you look at those snakes, none of those are really crazy morphs. Those are all the normals, or what Petco calls fancies. They're snakes that have maybe one codom gene that's pretty inexpensive. Oftentimes you get a pastel or whatever at Petco, and keep in mind that a lot of times these are kids who bought a snake and are trying to hide it from their parents, and then when their parents find out, they make them get rid of it. Or it's somebody who bought a snake at, went into Petco for cat food and came out with a snake. And those snakes don't usually last with that person for the next 25 to 30 years because they don't know what they're getting into, You got it? You found your net? All right. Here we go. Okay. Where am I at on this, you guys? Look at that. I caught you. There you go. Go find Echo. Okay. Where are we at? So I think the point that I was making was that somebody is going to have a hard time selling a $70 snake on Morph Market, and they're going to have a hard time selling a $1,200 snake on Craigslist. So it's important to think about who your customer is. So I personally don't want to sell to people that would, to pet stores for one thing. I don't want to wholesale, and I don't want to sell to people off Craigslist, some kid that rides over on his bike and picks up a snake and throws it in a tank. That's my personal choice. So I'm breeding higher end snakes. I'm focusing more on the recessive genes. I do have a couple, like here, I'll give you an example. Lovely Damara here is a snake that I would recommend for most people to just keep as a pet. She's a pinstripe, and unless you're breeding her with somebody that has a lot of genes, she's going to produce some fairly inexpensive snakes. Now, I am actually breeding her with the inspector, and he's got banana and a bunch of other codom genes. But I also am fortunate in that I have a platform where I do have a lot of people who want pet quality animals, or I shouldn't even say pet quality, because they're all quality animals, right? But the less expensive ones, they don't want to pay $1,000 for a pet, And so Damara here, hopefully this year, will produce some of those. In all cases here, I've thought about who my buyer is. I've thought about who my buyer is when I produce some crazy double recessive thing eventually. And I've thought about who my buyer is if I end up with a pinstripe with maybe one or two other genes that the inspector has. What are you two up to? Oh, are you going to the ground already? Can you not do that, please? Are you going to be okay, young lady? Stay off the ground. And you stay off of the inspector's cage. They don't speak English. They don't know what I'm saying. For Kent's Corner this week, we're going to find out how Kent's snake is doing. If you remember, Kent was gifted a little baby axanthic ball python from Gray Family Snakes, and she's out of quarantine now. So Kent, how's she doing?
I don't know.
You haven't checked on her?
Heck no, I'm not trying to get killed by my own snake.
Well, you can check on her now and tell us how she's doing.
Well, she appears to not have murdered anyone yet, because there'd be red all around her mouth. And she's still black and white, which means her poison hasn't come in. When that comes in, she'll turn yellow or orange or blue.
Kent, you got two facts right. She hasn't murdered any people, and she is black and white. Quick update, folks. Anya is eating very well, and she's really well socialized. She's doing great. As an axanthic ball python, I would say that her chances of ever developing poison and turning orange, yellow, or blue is 0. And her chances of ever murdering anyone is pretty slim as well.
But never 0. Thank you for watching Kent's Corner.
So there's your Anya update. 4 times over the last year or two, I've received a message from different accounts, but it's the same message. It's 3 words. You sell snakes? And twice in those messages, they didn't come with a question mark. So not even asking for a response. It's just a statement at that point. And, if I was a better snake salesman, I would go, well, yes, sir, I do. What are you looking for? What can we get you into today? Let's sit down and talk numbers. But I'm not a good snake salesman. And the fact is, I do occasionally sell snakes, but it's none of that random person's business, whether I sell snakes or not. Because, in fact, I have this little boy. Look at this. This little boy right here technically is for sale, but he's not going to go to somebody who messages me with, you sell snakes. People do message me, though, and they usually say, hey, Bob, I like your videos and your snakes are cool, and I'm just wondering if you sell any. And that person who introduces themselves, and I know that they know who I am, they didn't just run across a picture of a snake and ask the guy if he sells snakes. I'll engage them, and I'll let them know that my waiting lists come from my Patreon supporters, and that I'm going to put you back, young man, and that sometimes most of the clutch will go to the Patreon supporters, and then usually I have one or two left over that could go to other people. So I'm not just trying to get rid of snakes to every random person. That's what a Craigslist ad would accomplish. This is the horde of keepers, by the way. These are the people that would make up the waiting list. I will say that I don't think that this is always how it's going to... I mean, it is always how it's going to happen, but as I produce more snakes, I have a feeling that I will have to open a Morph Market account. I will always go to Patreon first for the waiting list. But I'm sure as I have more clutches, I'm going to have more and more snakes that won't necessarily go to Patreon. So you have to sort of change and evolve as you grow and figure out how you're going to do things a little bit differently. Thanks so much, by the way, to these Patreon supporters that are really helping the channel out. I appreciate them very much. They've got a really cool community going over there. That's patreon.com/greenroompythons, by the way, if you want to check it out. And there is our channel sponsor, Black Box Cages. Thanks to them, too. Here's Echo right here, you guys, in her favorite spot. She has found her target. She knows it's right there. Her favorite thing, because it means food. People who think that breeding snakes will help them get rich might want to think again. There are people who do very well. Some people have just been in it for years and years, and they've built up a massive group of snakes, and they do very well. And some people have invested a ton of money into a collection and so quickly have done well just because they put a ton of money into it. But the vast majority of breeders do it in a way that sort of pays for their hobby. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time, and it pays for their hobby, and sometimes then a little bit more, or sometimes then a little bit less, because it's also very expensive. There's costs of rodents when you have a large group of snake. That costs of the cost of what you're used to, maybe a rodent a week, becomes many rodents a week, and that's an expense. Vet bills, the enclosures, the substrate, all that stuff. There's a lot of expense to it. I think there's a lot of people who breed because they think everybody else is doing it. And that might not consciously go through their head, but they see on social media all these breeders, and it just seems like that's the thing to do. But keep in mind this. The reason that we see all these breeders on, I'm just going to take Instagram, but it's also TikTok and everywhere else. But the reason that we see all of these on Instagram is that those are the accounts that Instagram pushes to us. So you get a breeder that has they can have tons of content because they have tons of snakes all doing different things and with all these cool looks and everything, and that becomes popular quickly. Instagram sees that and pushes it out to you. But look up all the snakes or all the accounts that are like Monty the Python or Noodles the Snake. It's a pet owner that has a snake, and they post all the cute things that their snake does. There's a billion of those. They just don't become as popular because they don't have a ton of content. Some of them do though. Some of those people are really creative. A lot of that has to do with just how creative you are with your content. It seems like everybody's breeding, but they're really not. So don't fall under that pressure subconsciously that you feel like just because you have a snake or a few snakes that means you should be breeding them just because everybody else is doing it, because they're really not. Most keepers of snakes are not breeding them. Do you want to just hang out with me? Is that what we're doing? You're both hanging out with me now? What are we doing? Why do you always have to climb on top of Echo? You don't have to do that. So if you're thinking about breeding, it's probably obvious that pairing a normal to a pastel or something like that is probably not the thing to do unless you want your snakes to end up in a shelter. So if you want to see strategies on figuring out snakes to breed, check out this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. I'm going to wrangle these crazy super dwarfs. Why are you so crazy? Why do you always have to climb on me? You got a whole tree to climb on. Look, there it is. There's a rope. Get up that rope. Don't climb on Echo. That's not nice. There we go. Good. Got him. Man, they're like toddlers.